to the Draft Utopia 2013 NFL finale. This is the week of all weeks. There was so much action this week. You had the Ravens, the Miami Dolphins, the San Diego Chargers, and the Pittsburgh Steelers competing in a Final Four men's NFL bracket to determine which team would make the Lingerie Football League playoffs. I'm just kidding. We know one of these teams is going to go to the NFL playoffs. We already know which teams are playing which, but we're trying to make this as exciting as possible, trying to create as much anticipation leading up to every single highlight to make it fun and engaging for the readers. So let's get to work. Carolina Panthers went to the Georgia Dome to duel the Atlanta Falcons. First quarter, 3rd and goal. How will Matt Ryan handle this play? Ryan receives precise pass protection, utilizes Tony Gonzalez as a decoy for misdirection despite having a second-team offensive line, and Jason Snelling, a.k.a. Jason Snelling, may have saved his job with a receiving touchdown on 3rd down. Falcon punch! 7 points on the scoreboard for the Falcons. Atlanta led 7-0 after 1 quarter. 3rd and 10. Cam Newton fails to react to pressure. Credit Atlanta's left end for exposing Carolina's overrated play at right tackle in the 2nd quarter. 4th down. Greg Hardy penetrates Matt Ryan with a sack for a loss of downs on the play later in the 2nd quarter. Matt Ryan threw a pick 6. Melvin White gave the Atlanta Fakers Panther physical therapy. Game tied at 7. Carolina's offense struggled early in the first half. Newton made a bad throw on 3rd down. The interception to the Atlanta Falcons and the fumble off a turnover. Carolina had problems clicking in the first half because Atlanta opened things up with a 10-0 lead. But what was the climax of this contest in Atlanta? Well, the climax was very simple. Cam Newton threw a passing touchdown to Ted Ginn to gain the lead. And you had a feeling that Carolina might clinch a first-round bye at this point. Ted Ginn struggled in the past with the Miami Dolphins and the San Francisco 49ers after being highly touted coming out of Ohio State, after being a top 10 pick, after being a guy that declared for the NFL draft after losing 41-14 to the Florida Gators in the 2007 BCS national title game. Good times. But he really came through in this season as a slot receiver. And the guy was 5'10", 193 pounds. He probably never should have been a top 10 pick, but he blew scouts away with a 40 time. He led by example for The Ohio State University, and Ted Ginn inserted himself into the slot behind Steve Smith and Brandon LaFell. He showed up, brought his A game, 500 receiving yards, 5 receiving touchdowns, and you really have to hand it to Ted Ginn for the way he played this season. He played like he deserved a 2-year contract, so give it to him, Carolina. Give it to him once he shows you more first downs in the playoffs. You don't have to hand the guy a contract, but it's like, you know, if you have a little cap room and you can get Ted Ginn for a cheap deal, take it. Give him a short-term deal. But the point is, you got all these playmakers that don't get enough credit for how Newton's playing. They've adapted to the way Cam Newton's playing. And it's interesting because this is a team that lost Rob Chudzinski, and you thought, okay, the Panthers are going to suck without Rob Chudzinski. We will get to the breaking news involving Rob Chudzinski and the Cleveland Browns later today. Alright, so anyway, my phone's ringing off the hook. Apologize about that because we have to X that stuff out and mentally focus when we're filming. Why the Carolina Panthers won? We had a 3rd quarter duel between Roddy White and Greg Olsen in the 3rd quarter. White scored to give the Falcons a 17-14 lead before the Panthers made it 21-17, and Carolina won by a point, 21-20. Why did the Carolina Panthers win? Well, outside of the highlights, let's look at the statistics. Well, the defensive ends showed up for Carolina today. Greg Hardy and Charles Johnson combined for 6 sacks. Greg Hardy had his way with Matt Ryan by registering 4 sacks as right end. He literally abused Atlanta's backup left tackle, despite the early success Matt Ryan had in the 1st quarter when he threw a passing touchdown to Jason Snelling. Carolina's middle linebacker Luke Kuechly had 10 total tackles, 5 solo, 5 assisted, and continues to display that consistency as one of the NFL's elite middle linebackers on the mic. Wins Rookie of the Year and follows that up with Defensive Player of the Year, first player since Lawrence Taylor to potentially accomplish that feat. Even though this secondary struggles in coverage at times, they make up for it with turnovers, and they can cover effectively since they held Colin Kaepernick to under 100 passing yards earlier this season. How will the Panthers do in the playoffs? Carolina's defense is playing like a Super Bowl caliber defense at the right time. Depth at defensive line with defensive ends and defensive tackles, check. Luke Kuechly leading by example like a Hall of Fame middle linebacker in the making, double check. And the secondary bringing a combination of coverage and interceptions on a week-to-week basis, despite the lack of experience, despite the fact that the Carolina Panthers do not have a big-name player on their entire secondary. Triple check. Carolina can win it all if Cam Newton delivers in the playoffs on offense by playing turnover-free football, because this defense is a Super Bowl caliber defense, and defense does win championships. Baltimore Ravens face the Cincinnati Bengals. Corey Graham began this game with a bang as a field cornerback. Andy Dalton threw a pass to Marvin Jones, who was lined up as the flanker instead of A.J. Green. Don't know why. Graham gets a pick for the Baltimore Ravens on the first play of the game following the kickoff. Graham displayed flawless man coverage. Why was Marvin Jones lined up at the flanker, Marvin Lewis? I thought that was A.J. Green's job to be Dalton's primary receiver. I guess you want to add variety and create suspense to distract the Ravens' secondary, to make sure Green doesn't get double-teamed, to make sure it's not so obvious what your offense is trying to accomplish. My bad. Let's continue. That was clearly an incomplete pass. Marlon Brown didn't make the catch after Flacco's interception. You have to applaud Flacco for evading pressure and making a heck of a throw. But that was the only hell of a throw Flacco made the entire contest, because after that point, Flacco struggled immensely. 3rd and 9, Ravens ball. Flacco gets protection, incomplete pass, and critical zone coverage by the Bengals secondary in the first possession for the Ravens following the interception, enabled the Bengals to generate some momentum in this contest. Jason Tucker gets some points after the Andy Dalton interception, 3-0 Bengals. Andy Dalton continues to build negative rapport with this Bengals fan base in a must-win Week 17 matchup by giving Baltimore the ball. Another interception. What gives, Dalton? Baltimore regains possession. Bernard Pierce with a 14-yard run. First down, Ravens. Ravens got 2 field goals off Dalton's 2 picks. Ravens deserve to miss the playoffs with an inability to score touchdowns in Week 17. And yes, Joe Flacco, you got overpaid after receiving a new contract following an 11 touchdowns, no interceptions playoff performance last year, following the win over the San Francisco 49ers in Super Bowl 47, which was last year's Super Bowl in the Mercedes-Benz Superdome, or the Louisiana Superdome, whatever the hell you want to call it. Later in the contest, A.J. Green smoked the Ravens secondary like a salmon with speed. Bengals score on a 53-yard touchdown from Dalton to Green, where Green showcases his ability to translate touchdowns to a vertical offense. Bengals led 7-6 after 1 quarter. Marvin Jones redeems himself after a horrible play against Corey Graham. Baltimore has to find a new free safety in the 2014 NFL Draft. Jones scores a receiving touchdown on this Ravens secondary. Bengals led 14-6 and led 17-6 at halftime. Ravens got a field goal in the 3rd quarter. One other note is the horrid coverage of Dre Kirkpatrick. I'm foolish for calling the former Alabama cornerback a Pro Bowler on my Draft Utopia podcast when they first aired back in the day, prior to the launch of DraftUtopia.com. Dre Kirkpatrick is a bust, and 90% of the players that leave Alabama and don't put the work in once they get to the NFL fail epically as well, because Nick Saban has that much credo as a 5-star pimp from the state of Alabama. But that's not what matters. What matters is the AFC North duel between the Ravens and Bengals in Cincinnati. Ravens tied the game at 17 after 3 quarters. This game was Cincinnati's to lose in the 4th quarter. After Andy Dalton scrambled for a 1-yard rushing touchdown near the goal line in the 4th quarter, that sealed Baltimore's fate without Ray Lewis. Did you enjoy the Andy Dalton sex party in your end zone, Ray Lewis? The reason I'm asking is because It's just the Ravens won the Super Bowl, and there's nothing better for the NFL from a ratings perspective than to see the Ravens go 8-6 and watch karma bite them like a cobra and anaconda after awkward pause. After the Ravens won the Super Bowl last year and Ray Lewis announced retirement, the Mike Tomlin incident where he stepped onto the football field, all this karma and momentum was working in Baltimore's favor. But then the final 2 weeks of the season, the Ravens lose. They lose 41-7 to the Patriots at M&T Bank Stadium. And then they follow it up with this game against the Cincinnati Bengals. Because the Ravens failed to capitalize in the final 2 weeks, the Ravens get screwed. Sorry, Baltimore. That's the way the cookie crumbles in Cincinnati. Bengals capture the AFC East. The game recap. It was really tough to say. You can be subjective about the Ravens or objective about the Bengals. Are you going to talk about Joe Flacco's 50 pass attempts out of 63 total plays, the inability to score turnovers off interceptions rather than settling for field goals, and criticize the lack of running the football like Tom Jackson? Or will you give the Bengals credit for delivering in the fourth quarter when it mattered the most? There's going to be bias about these two squads because the Ravens versus Bengals is an AFC North rivalry, period. Both quarterbacks played like Division II hotshots that deserve to lose on Wild Card Weekend. Dalton and Flacco threw for a combined 7 interceptions in this contest. How will the Bengals do in the playoffs? Andy Dalton is 0-2 in the playoffs. Even with home field for this Wild Card Weekend, I expect him to lose to San Diego or Pittsburgh because he lacks experience. 2004 draft picks Phillip Rivers and Ben Roethlisberger have proved that they can win on the playoffs. And they have that playoff credo that Dalton lacks. Plus, those guys both have better offensive coordinators that know how to offend Cincinnati's fan base. So, the Bengals will be one and done, again, until Dalton qualifies himself by winning a playoff game. He has home field this time instead of going to Reliant Stadium, where he had to rely on defeats against the Houston Texans to prepare him for this occasion. But they're the Bungles. They're bound to lose in the playoffs. Let's go to the Lucas Oil Stadium, where Jim Irsay is going to school Jacksonville like a Texan. Colts offense in the red zone. Andrew Luck to Griff Whalen. Whalen dropped a pass in the end zone. Stanford head coach David Shaw would be ashamed. But Jim Harbaugh is too epic to give a rat's ass because he's living the alpha lifestyle in San Francisco after leaving Stanford prior to Luck's entry in the National Football League. Ty Hilton responded with a vital reception near the goal line. Following play, Donald Brown scores a rushing touchdown. The Colts offensive line delivered with a perfect drive of blocking on this drive, which really gave Luck the confidence to utilize his weapons like an invaluable game manager. Colts led 7-0. Prior possession, nice man coverage by the Jaguars on third down, 4th and goal. Trent Richardson wakes up out of a coma after screwing my fantasy team this season when I drafted him with a top 5 pick. Richardson with a rushing touchdown on 4th and goal. Credit this offensive line for the outstanding play by the Colts offense so far. And yes, Trent Richardson, your counter run to the end zone rather than running straight up the alley, straight up the middle, straight up the inside of the Jaguars' defense was epic in its own right because it was a rushing touchdown to the outside on 4th and 1. Kind of like the rushing touchdowns you had back at Alabama. Sweet home Alabama. Colts led 17-0 after 1 quarter. Second quarter, less than a minute in the first half. Antoine Bethea with an interception thanks to his anticipation of the Jaguars' offense with awareness and zone coverage prior to the interception. Colts offense regains possession of the ball. Colts up 20-3 at halftime. I knew the Colts were going to win after this point. Griff Whalen scores a receiving touchdown in the second half after a sluggish first half. Colts led 27-3 in the third quarter and won 30-10. Game recap. Colts won this game in the trenches because of the blocking in the first half by this offensive line. Pass blocking, run blocking, zone blocking, trench blocking, pull blocking, cut blocking, blocking. An offensive line that did every single confidence interval to school Jacksonville's defensive line blocking in the trenches. That blocking enabled Andrew Luck to take care of business at Lucas Oil Stadium. And no, he didn't blank block anybody. Not that there's anything wrong with blank blocking, because it's inappropriate. Colts finished the season 11-5 and will get a rematch with the Kansas City Chiefs at Lucas Oil Stadium. The Colts defeated the Kansas City Chiefs 23-7 2 weeks ago at Arrowhead. Well, technically it was last week, but it'll be 2 weeks when they meet in the wild card, whether it be Sunday or Saturday. Who's going to get effed in the A on Saturday? New York Jets versus the Miami Dolphins. What's the deal with Ryan Tannehill's pass protection on 2nd and 9 near the 7-minute mark? That was just flat out unacceptable. He had protection, no pressure, no coverage. Jets defense follows that up with a quarterback hurry where New York forces Tannehill out of the pocket to make a throw. And Jets defense had brilliant execution, and Rex Ryan played like a coach that was trying to save his job. Rashard Matthews is a fantasy sleeper next season because of the way he's made receptions at times this year. Jets and Dolphins both played well on defense in the first quarter, 0-0 in the second quarter. Ryan Tannehill threw a passing touchdown to Mike Wallace on 3rd down when facing pressure. Dolphins led 7-0, and yes, they deserve to be in the playoffs when Tannehill makes throws like that, when it matters. Jets tied at 7 before the Jets returned to the red zone. Their red zone reality series on Hard Knocks has been renewed for another red zone. Wide receiver David Nelson showing flashes of Wayne Corbett with his speed and hands. Geno Smith had a rushing touchdown late in the second quarter following that David Nelson moment. Geno Smith's scrambling gave the Jets a 14-7 lead in Miami. Jets won 20-7. The game recap. The Jets won this game with Geno Smith's rushing touchdown plus phenomenal defense. The Jets defense was phenomenal. Outside of Mike Wallace with his receiving touchdown, rookie cornerback D. Milliner was phenomenal in this contest. He illustrated adequate man coverage and really displayed exceptional ability as a field cornerback containing flanker receivers who happen to be Ryan Tannehill's favorite target to throw to. You also look at Milliner's 2 interceptions in this contest. I really like the way Milliner played. He anchored the Jets secondary, and you also have to look at the way the linebackers executed tackles, the way the Jets rushed the quarterback, the way this defensive line mixed things up with variability, combinations of variability, the way Rex Ryan orchestrated and coordinated this entire Jets defense in general. The teamwork of Rex Ryan and Geno Smith allows the Jets to play devil's advocate in Miami. Jets play spoiler, and both Geno Smith and Rex Ryan get renewed after a close but no cigar cancel. It's almost like the Jets had a Robot Chicken-esque moment where you thought this team was going to have to rebuild, but then they saved face at the end of the year. And that's how you do it, right, Adult Swim? So in 2015, Geno Smith, Ryan Tannehill, or E.J. Manuel will be fired from Donald Trump's boardroom known as the AFC East. Why? Because these quarterbacks were drafted early in the draft, and the AFC East is Tom Brady's division, but all 3 of these quarterbacks displayed the potential to lead their franchise at times. Ryan Tannehill showed flashes of emerging into a future playoff caliber quarterback. Geno Smith got hot at the end of the year and kept Miami from a playoff appearance. Dolphins got swept by the Bills and failed to close out against the Jets at home. E.J. Manuel got injury prone during his rookie year. Plus, he threw 4 interceptions against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And that's unacceptable, especially when you throw for 0 touchdowns. So yes, these quarterbacks all have potential to lead their franchises and challenge New England at some point down the road. The problem is that none of these quarterbacks have the consistency to do it for 16 weeks unless the supporting cast avoids conflict. The Jets had games where Geno Smith was incongruent because sometimes he'd throw a lot of interceptions, other times he'd make game-winning plays, other times he'd have moments, sort of like my ransom stories at NATV. Geno Smith had that ability to make plays happen, and that's why he deserves to win Offensive Rookie of the Year or NFL Rookie of the Year in general. And you look at Tannehill, he sort of showed flashes like he could be that guy, but because the whole Dolphins offensive line incident with Richie Incognito and Jonathan Martin, you kind of have to rebuild the offensive line and give Ryan Tannehill plausible deniability, even though he choked at the end of the season after an 8-6 start with 2 weeks left to play. And the Bills have to build a better offensive line for E.J. Manuel, plus look at some potential defensive options in the draft. But these teams have quarterbacks that are supposed to be franchise quarterbacks, and one of them is going to get fired in Donald Trump's boardroom next season if each quarterback displays similar skills that they did this season and doesn't improve the overall consistent play. Because these were guys that were drafted highly. We talked about them. We heard ESPN snort a series of draft hype about these quarterbacks, and they have responsibilities now that they're in the NFL. They have goals and roles and discipline that they have to live up to. So it was fun to watch these quarterbacks go at it. It was like watching 3 AFC East squads play rock, paper, scissors. But it's how you finish. It's not how you start. And Geno Smith finished phenomenally, despite some inconsistency. And Mark Sanchez will be playing Duck Hunt on Super Nintendo once he recovers from his injury, since nobody will sign him. Maybe Tim Tebow will join his slumber party for a game of Mario Kart, but I wouldn't count on it. Sorry we forgot about the Sanchez pun for a second. Lions-Vikings. Vikings wide receiver Cordell Patterson with a critical Duck Dynasty rushing touchdown on a pitch from Matt Castle. Patterson displayed unrivaled agility as the Vikings acquired a 7-0 lead over the Detroit Lions. That was the score after one quarter. Lions score in the second half on a Reggie Bush receiving touchdown. Vikings won 14-13 and pulled the upset as I predicted. Bottom line is Stafford played very passive, putting a huge emphasis on the short passing game following 2 horrid outings against the Baltimore Ravens and the New York Giants, where he threw interceptions at inopportune times. There was also a game against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I believe, where he threw 4 interceptions but still won. And you just look at Stafford. His team's been too undisciplined. Sure, you've drafted Calvin Johnson, you've drafted Ndamukong Suh, you've drafted Riley Reif, you signed Reggie Bush in free agency, and you brought the talent to Detroit. Cutler and Rodgers were injured. This was supposed to be your year, and you blew it. Thanks for playing, Jim Schwartz. Now go have butt sex with Matt Millen. Not that there's anything wrong with that. Right, Walter Football? Anyway, the Lions are out of the playoff hunt, and the Vikings will be in the playoffs. And it's interesting because the Vikings continue to dominate as a run-blocking offensive line because their offensive line coach puts a huge emphasis on run blocking, even with the absence of Adrian Peterson. Second-year running back Matt Asiata, the former Utah Ute, continues to blossom with another big game on the ground. It's safe to say that Asiata surpassed Toby Gerhart on the Vikings depth chart. What each team needs next season. Like I mentioned, Detroit needs a new coach that's going to give the Lions organization team chemistry and discipline players with an old-school mentality. You have to discipline these guys. It's not an insane asylum or an insanity workout featuring convicts on Hard Knocks. This is Detroit Lions football, home of the Motor City Monster Truck Kitties. And you need to play like it. So the Lions have to rebuild their coaching staff to tame their players, or their Lions if you consider Detroit's front office a complete circus. But the Vikings need a quarterback. And I don't know if they'll be picking high enough to draft one because Matt Castle played like a QB that wants to keep his job at the end of the year. The Washington Redskins encountered a rainy game with the New York Giants, and nothing like watching the Giants get the silent treatment on Week 17 in the first half. Giants led 10-6 at halftime, and Eli Manning got injured in the second quarter, and I didn't see the injury until the third quarter after the moment drizzled in a pouring Giants stadium. Giants won 20-16. I want to criticize NFL Red Zone, but I can't because there were so many games this week. It's like Scott Hansen was busting his tail off trying to keep track of all the games, have fun with it, get fans the highlights they want, and the production crew should have gotten on that sooner, but it's football. We're all caught up in the moment. We're all trying to enjoy commercial-free football, and at halftime somebody probably found out about that, and it's weird how that they waited so long to report that on Red Zone. But the Giants won 20-6 in a meaningless contest, and a lot of people thought it'd be either the Redskins or the Giants that took the NFC East, but neither team lived up to the hype. So what was the game recap? What did we take away from this contest? Kirk Cousins was a disappointment in his window of opportunity as Robert Griffin III's backup. He had 3 games to demonstrate why he should be a starting quarterback, and he went 0 for 3. He went 0 for 1 in the first game because of a lack of discipline. He went 0 for 2 in the next game because Jerry Jones sacrificed Tony Romo to get a brief victory. And Romo played his heart out. He won that game by making the right throws, but he got injured at the end, and Tony Romo was sacrificed for a Kirk Cousins defeat. Jerry Jones and Dan Snyder made that transaction following the game. And the Redskins lost this week on the road against the Giants because Kirk Cousins just flat out sucked. 19 for 49, 169 passing yards, 0 passing touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. This was your final game to prove why you could be a winner after going 0-2 against the Falcons and the Cowboys. You lose to Atlanta on the road in the Georgia Dome. You fail to beat the Cowboys at FedEx Field, and then there's this rain game for third place in the NFC East, even though the Redskins were going to finish last. But the Redskins need to bring in a new head coach, draft a new quarterback on day 3 to compete with Cousins to be the future backup and develop him into a potential challenger for the Redskins quarterback job if RG3 regresses again like Derrick Rose, because Kirk Cousins is not the future backup. He's a short-term backup with the ability to be a third stringer and maybe a Brian Hoyer guy in 2 or 3 years, just like Hoyer if he develops properly, goes through the progressions, and gains a deeper insight as a journeyman through the NFL. And Robert Griffin III is your guy for the short term, but Cousins failed to capitalize on this job opportunity, this job interview with the Redskins on the field, and that's why he'll remain in Washington as a backup or third stringer. Following an 0-3 stretch during Shanahan's choice to bench RG3. Remember, Shanahan chose to bench RG3 for Cousins. That was on Shanahan. P.S. The Rams own the Skins' 2014 first-round pick after the Redskins traded the Rams a first-round pick to move up to the number 2 spot to grab RG3. Jeff Fisher's like, now we're even, Dan Snyder. Now we go to Heinz Field to watch the Cleveland Browns try to take a dump on the black and yellow. What would happen at Heinz? Browns began with outstanding zone coverage on the first play from the Steelers' offense, and that was the only moment where the Browns really excelled. After that, Roethlisberger fired a medium pass to tight end Heath Miller. Can never go wrong there, considering the abysmal coverage of the Browns linebackers, the inability to game plan around Heath Miller with the medium pass. Third down, Steelers' offensive line brings the chains, some run blocking. Jonathan Dwyer came out of nowhere to move the chains to help the Steelers acquire their first down of the game. Later in the first quarter, Ben Roethlisberger to Jerry O'Cottree, first down Steelers. Cottree gives the Steelers an offensive encore that results in 6 points, 7-0 Steelers. Browns went for it on 4th and 4. Now the Browns want to rethink their decision by calling a timeout. So much mismanagement by the Chudzinski crew, courtesy of Cleveland's coaching staff / front office. Steelers brought more run blocking the second quarter, this time Le'Veon Bell with a rushing touchdown following Dwyer's first down. Steelers defense doing their part, keeping the defense of Cleveland scoreless in the first half. Steelers' defense was lights out in this 20-7 win over the Cleveland Browns. Pittsburgh gets a field goal with some special teams, and when it comes to coaching like a steel curtain alpha man on defense, all you need to know is that Mike Tomlin is the alpha, and Dick LeBeau is the old school wingman that knows more about coaching than Tomlin because he's a former player, plus he's older than Tomlin. Why do you think they call the Steelers the steel curtain defense, black and yellow? Texans-Titans in Tennessee, home of the former Houston Oilers. First quarter, Jonathan Grimes scores on a 3-yard rushing touchdown. Texans led 7-0 after one quarter thanks to Grimes making sales at the Buy More in Houston. Titans won this game 16-10, and the Texans win the number 1 pick because they lost to the Teen Titans in Tennessee. Texans likely to go with the Bill O'Brien / Teddy Bridgewater combo once the Texans announce their new head coach, because Bill O'Brien would leave Penn State in a heartbeat to be a head coach in the NFL, considering the bowl probation Penn State is on. Plus, his guy was Tom Brady's quarterback coach and offensive coordinator. He was the offensive coordinator when the Pats got to the Super Bowl and lost to the New York Giants. So this guy could coach Teddy Bridgewater. You'll have Andre Johnson and DeAndre Hopkins. You'll have Owen Daniels back as a tight end following injury. Arian Foster will be back. You'll have depth with Ben Tate. And you'll be the head coach. Not the offensive coordinator. You'll be the head coach. You can pick your offensive coordinator. You can keep Wade Phillips around, or you can bring in another defensive coordinator. Maybe, I don't know what you could do. You could get Rob Chudzinski and make your offense even more potent, because you'd have Chudzinski as the coordinator. You'd be the head coach, and it'd be really proficient for the Texans front office moving forward. And you could keep Wade Phillips, and you'd have that coaching staff to manage the players so that the Texans turn things around once they get Bridgewater with the number 1 pick in the draft. 49ers versus the Arizona Cardinals. 49ers began this game with 17 unanswered points in the first quarter. San Francisco responding superb in terms of momentum following the Navarro Bowman pick 6 against the Atlanta Falcons. On Monday Night Football? Don't need to try so hard, because if I do, the 49ers linebackers might kidnap me following this video. But the bottom line is the San Francisco 49ers team as a whole united from a psychological standpoint following that win over the Falcons, because they responded with 17 unanswered points. We're not going to credit the defense, we're not going to credit the linebackers, but we're going to credit the team psychologically, because Colin Kaepernick threw 2 passing touchdowns in the first quarter right out of the gate. They had a field goal. That 17-0 lead gave the 49ers the motivation, the confidence to triumph 23-20 in Arizona. Cardinals' passing game clicked as Carson Palmer threw for 323 passing yards. That doesn't matter since Colin Kaepernick won the turnover battle. He played turnover-free football, and playing turnover-free football in Arizona matters since the 49ers got off to a 17-0 start to open up the game. Game, set, and match. 49ers go to the playoffs. Cardinals are sent packing, but despite putting up a valiant effort this season in an intense NFC West division. Green Bay Packers versus the Chicago Bears. Small soldiers playing at Soldier Field. Gorgonites versus the Commando Elite. The Gorgonites of Green Bay versus the Commando Elite, known as Jay Cutler and company. First quarter. Aaron Rodgers began this game on a very cheesy note, much like Archer of the Gorgonites. He threw 2 interceptions to the Chicago Bears early to open up the game. Cutler had a very bad first half as well. Major Chip Cutler. And Major Chip Cutler, less than 100 passing yards. Unlike Small Soldiers, where the... You know what? Screw the Small Soldiers references. It's Packers-Bears. It's the best damn rivalry in the NFC North, arguably in the NFC period, due to the history of the rivalry. First half, 2-minute warning, Jay Cutler to Alshon Jeffrey. Jeffrey fumbled like a Toys R Us kid as Sam Shields recovered a baby bottle pop on the fumble. Packers ball. Cheeseheads get a field goal off the turnover and led 13-7 at halftime. Both defenses showcased a defensive confidence limit by abusing the opposing quarterback in the first half. I love the way Julius Peppers constantly pressured this offense by the Packers, you also saw guys like Lance Briggs take affirmative action as well. Matt Forte ignited the crowd at Soldier Field with 2 rushing touchdowns in the third quarter to begin the second half. And it was a duel. Forte got the first rushing touchdown. Randall Cobb recorded his first of 2 receiving touchdowns. And Forte then scored again to get his second rushing touchdown in the third quarter. It was like a limbo game or a push-pull third quarter where the Bears had momentum. The Bears. Fourth quarter, Jay Cutler received outstanding pass protection. Green Bay brought nice man coverage as Tramon Williams dueled Brandon Marshall. Marshall used his route running to break free for a touchdown on a post route. Bears led 28-20. Late in the fourth quarter, Eddie Lacy pounds it in after struggling with injuries all day. Doesn't matter if he did it in the goal line or if he didn't do it in the goal line. Sweet home Alabama. Late in the fourth, Aaron Rodgers to Randall Cobb. Cobb scores his second receiving touchdown at Soldier Field. Gorgonites defeat the Commando Elite. Green Bay defeats Chicago. Green Bay took a 33-28 lead in the final seconds. Packers win the NFC North. Packers are going to the playoffs. But let's look at what Chicago accomplished as a consolation prize. Jay Cutler, 14 for 20, 211 passing yards, 2 passing TDs, and no picks. Matt Forte, 22 carries, 110 rushing yards, and 2 rushing touchdowns. Bears still get Cobb hold thanks to some former Kentucky Wildcat wide receiver named Randall Cobb. Cobb does the Soldier Boy. The Packers send crybaby Cutler back to the Windy City without a playoff appearance again. It sucks for Chicago because this was a game where it came down to who had the ball last, and Aaron Rodgers came through when it mattered. Bears played turnover-free football. They had better pass protection. They abused the Packers' defensive line with their offensive line. Like I mentioned previously, they pressured Aaron Rodgers with guys like Julius Peppers and Lance Briggs, and the Packers still won. The Bears still lost. Discount double checkmate. Packers win, and Chicago, you're still Green Bay's bitch. Green Bay will have a home date at Lambeau Field against the NFC West runner-up to be decided. Buffalo Bills versus the New England Patriots. Patriots continue to offend defenses with offensive play, led by Tom Brady. You have to credit offensive line coach Dante Scarnecchia for continuing to discipline this offense by reinforcing the importance of keeping Tom Brady from getting hit despite injuries up front, with Nate Soldier and Sebastian Vollmer out at offensive tackle. After a 41-7 highway robbery at M&T Bank Stadium, the Patriots had to pay their dues with the Buffalo Bills in order to obtain a first-round bye. Pat's offensive line continues to play like a bunch of big boys in the trenches on a hot streak. Blount's 100 rushing yards and New England's teamwork make the Pats an intriguing Super Bowl pick. Brady threw for 93 passing yards like an unselfish diplomat in the first half. Pats led 16-3 at halftime. Patriots secure a first-round bye and won 34-20 following the victory over the Buffalo Bills. And then they celebrated at Buffalo Wild Wings. Not that there's anything wrong with celebrating at Buffalo Wild Wings. I'm sure they did a drive-by with former quarterback J.P. Lossman. We'll know what happens with the Patriots following the Broncos-Raiders contest in Oakland. Buccaneers Saints heading into the Mercedes-Benz Superdome, formerly known as the Louisiana Superdome, until Mercedes-Benz applied the Louisiana Purchase concept on Saints owner Tom Benson. The Saints were 7-0 at home in 2013. How would Drew Brees deal with a New Year's resolution against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in Week 17? In the first half, Brees went 17 for 21 with 321 passing yards, 4 passing touchdowns, and no interceptions. Talk about closing a sale in the first half. 2 words, Drew Brees! Saints win 42-17 after Brees made Sean Payton orgasm in the first half, and we apologize if we offended any Buccaneers fans. Suck it, Greg Schiano. You don't deserve to coach in the NFL. St. Louis Rams versus the Seattle Seahawks. Seahawks took a 13-0 lead. Seattle won 27-9. Seahawks clinch home field in the NFC. Well, now we know who's going to Green Bay. It's the San Francisco 49ers, ladies and gentlemen. Kaepernick's done it against Aaron Rodgers, and now he has to do it again. The rematch. How will home field affect the Seahawks? You have to credit Russell Wilson for making guys like Golden Tate, Doug Baldwin, and Jermaine Kearse look like quality receivers, especially when you consider the fact that left tackle Russell Okung missed games early in the season due to injuries. Okunga Matata. Wilson's on the brink of becoming an elite quarterback if he isn't one already. He'll have a challenge against the Saints, 49ers, or Packers. He doesn't get to play an NFC team like Philadelphia or Dallas, which will work against Wilson. I think, because Saints, 49ers, and Packers all seem like dangerous opponents, considering the fact that Green Bay's healthy at the right time, considering the fact that the 49ers are upset about being 0-2 against Russell Wilson in Seattle. The fact that Drew Brees wants to even the score after the Seahawks humiliated him at Quest Field with Matt Hasselbeck a couple of years ago. A lot of reasons why the Saints, Packers, or Niners could upset the number 1 seed Seattle Seahawks and make Russell Wilson sleepless in Seattle following a playoff defeat. Denver Broncos face the Oakland Raiders. It's evident that Peyton Manning wants home field. His ego, his statistics, John Elway's expectations are all illustrating why Denver deserves this top seed in the NFL. Does he shove his ego inside opposing secondaries like Ben Roethlisberger back in the day during Big Ben's glory days? Yes, he does, because he's number 18, kids. Manning went 25 for 28 with 266 passing yards, 4 TDs through the air, and no picks. Manning guided Denver to a 31-0 lead in the first half, taking care of business every day in Oakland on Sundays, through the air, and no picks. Manning guided Denver to a 31-0 lead in the first half before Denver secured home field. The other interesting aspect of this contest was the brief cameo of 2012 second-round draft pick Brock Osweiler. The former Arizona State Sun Devil declared as a junior, weighing in at 6'9", 237 pounds. He sat behind Manning for 2 seasons in Denver before showcasing his NFL debut as a backup quarterback in the Black Hole in Oakland. For anyone that was in a coma during Mel Kiper's scouting report on Brock Osweiler. Manning just broke Brees' single-season passing record, in addition to the record he set last week when he broke Tom Brady's record for the most passing touchdowns in a season. Manning's 51 passing touchdowns entering Week 17 exceeded Brady's 15 on the 16-0 Pats team that went 18-1 following a Super Bowl 42 loss to the New York Giants. Brees threw for 5,476 passing yards in 2011 before Manning shattered his record today. Manning had a career day and ended the regular season with a bang, but it is nothing until he wins in the playoffs, and he has to win this year. The Steelers or the Chargers could play devil's advocate as a 6 seed, and it's like, you gotta beat Rivers at home, Manning. He pulled the upset. You gotta beat Roethlisberger. Remember your playoff incident with the Colts? There's an expectation for Peyton Manning to deliver in the postseason. Osweiler began his career 3 for 3 against arguably one of the worst secondaries in the NFL with the Oakland Raiders before finishing the game 9 for 13, completing 6 of his 10 passes following the 3 for 3 start with 85 passing yards. Osweiler, you're still Peyton Manning's backup. Deal with it. Denver won 34-14. Green Bay Packers versus the Chicago Bears. We already did this highlight. I don't know why I copied and pasted it, but yeah, the Packers are in the playoffs. I wanted to do that highlight before the Chiefs-Chargers highlight because it's a highlight that you should save for the end of the show. I'm ashamed of myself for spoiling things a little too early. But we'll go to Qualcomm Stadium. Will Dan Fouts pay off the NFL officials in this vital Week 17 matchup? Or will the Kansas City Chiefs unleash their little giants in San Diego by downsizing quarterback Phillip Rivers with second-team play on offense? Can Kansas City outscore San Diego? First quarter Chiefs ball, quarterback Chase Daniel and Niall Davis are substituting for quarterback Alex Smith and running back Jamal Charles. How will the second-team QB/RB combo do? Chiefs resting their starters at quarterback and running back. Niles Davis with a 17-yard run. Chiefs led 17-0. I really liked how Donald Stevenson and Eric Fisher stepped up today at offensive tackle. Usually, you see these guys focus on run blocking. Today, you saw the pass block, run block, and zone block, the blocking combo, Rivers responded with a 22-yard passing touchdown to Ladarius Green before Chase Daniel threw his first career passing touchdown to Dexter McCluster. Talk about getting McClustered, San Diego. I know, Ron Burgundy wants to groom a Hitler mustache. He's upset about Dexter McCluster. Second quarter, Rivers hooks up with the other tight end, Antonio Gates, to tie the game at 14 before Niall Davis gets a Chiefs rushing touchdown. And that tier was a pity wish for Philip Rivers. How would Philip Rivers respond to my pity wish? Because we feel like he acts like a pussy or a cocky piece of blanket times. Cocky blanket. San Diego blanket. Ryan Suckup got a field goal in the third as the Chiefs led 24-10, but that is nothing compared to what happened in the fourth quarter when San Diego was fired up. Philip Rivers fired to Eddie Royal for his third passing touchdown before Nick Novak tied the game at 24. Ryan Suckup with a chance to win. No good. Ryan Suckup sucks up to the San Diego Amish Mafia. We are going to overtime, folks. And my tears continue to pity Philip Rivers. That one was courtesy of Dr. Phil, who knows that Rivers needs counseling, considering the fact that he's struggling to deal with Mike McCoy and former Steelers offensive coordinator / Arizona Cardinals head coach Ken Wisenhunt as his new offensive coordinator in San Diego. Overtime, you kept seeing a back-and-forth duel. It was fourth down, should have been a Chiefs ball. There was an interception that got ruled back because of a penalty as well. The NFL officials call it a first down. Chargers continue to drive before Nick Novak field goal. Chiefs had a chance to win. In the end, San Diego had the heart of a playoff team, the momentum of a playoff team following the field goal. NFL officials did not strike lightning on Pittsburgh's playoff chances with shady officiating. Dan Fouts did not pay off the NFL officials. San Diego's owners do not work for the NSA. Are you tired of our not puns, San Diego? I thought so. Chargers to secure the final wild card spots. How will the Chargers do in the playoffs? Like we said earlier, the Chargers will come into the playoffs with a lot of confidence, winning a playoff game against the Bengals on the road in Cincinnati with a lackluster supporting cast, with Mike McCoy as your head coach, Ken Wisenhunt as your offensive coordinator. It's a game for Rivers to prove why he deserves to keep his job. Rivers has to have that abundance mentality where he has to win with a weak supporting cast because he won with a strong supporting cast. And if Rivers doesn't win in the playoffs against Andy Dalton, he's a product of his supporting cast. Dalton is also a product of supporting cast because he doesn't have the arm strength. But Dalton has to prove that he can win a playoff game with a hell of a supporting cast because this is the best supporting cast Dalton has ever had. And it gets better and better and better. Philadelphia Eagles finished up Week 17 against the Dallas Cowboys in the AT&T New Cowboy Stadium. No, it's not that complicated. Guy was not present. Neither was Rob Chudzinski, who had to interrupt this contest when the Browns decided to fire him. First quarter, Kyle Orton makes his debut for the Cowboys versus the Eagles. He opens up the game with a slant pass to Dez Bryant. First down, Cowboys. Yeehaw! You saw the Eagles' front seven hold this team in check, and the front seven is so underrated despite the transition of the 3-4 defense. And I questioned the choice, too, at the beginning of the year, but Chip Kelly and this coaching staff have done a hell of a job getting through to the Eagles, and the fact that Nick Foles only threw 2 interceptions leading up to this contest, the fact that LaShawn McCoy leads the NFL in rushing yards is like, WTF. Aren't the Steelers supposed to be that team in Pennsylvania? But no, Gus the Groundhog made it rain in Philly, and now Pittsburgh's on the losing end of the spectrum in the NFL. But they're still 8-8 because they're the Steelers. Brandon Fletcher had a fumble recovery. Brandon Fletcher, fumble recovery. Eagles ball. Eagles got a field goal to gain a 3-0 lead. Nick Foles fires a pass to Zach Ertz. Remember the infancy of Draft Utopia when Draft Utopia scout writer Zen Bliss wrote a scouting report on the Stanford Cardinal tight end? I do, even if you don't. First down Eagles, 3-0 Philly after 1 quarter. Nick Foles began the second quarter with a short bubbly pass to LaShawn McCoy. Shady pops the bubbly in the Cowboys' end zone. 10-0 Eagles. Nick Foles goes to the sideline to get a Philly cheesesteak. Second quarter, Kyle Orton with a solid drive where he connects with rookie tight end Gavin Escobar from San Diego State Aztecs. Touchdown Cowboys. Eagles still up by 3. That's right, Jerry Jones. Give your players the serious silent treatment face. Nick Foles threw a pass to Brent Selleck. He had tons of time in the pocket to make the throw and carved the Cowboys' defense, as expected, for another passing touchdown. Talk about being tight with your tight ends. Following possession, Eagles linebackers anticipating tackles by using time management to execute the tackle, using foreplay to anticipate the Dallas Cowboys yards after catch, and capitalizing on that with tackles. Eagles using those linebackers to tackle these receivers, make sure they don't miss the tackles, and tackling matters because if you miss tackles, touchdown, first downs, other downs, downs that make Mr. Downs mad. No offense to Scott Downs. Dan Bailey got a field goal hat trick to cut the Eagles' lead from 10 points to 1 because he hit 3 consecutive field goals for the Dallas Cowboys. 4th and goal, Dallas stops Nick Foles. The Cowboys' defense gave Philadelphia some early Obamacare or the 4 downs before a Philadelphia turnover because Dallas wants to get into the NFL playoffs. Dallas had a window of opportunity to execute a 99-yard drive to gain the lead heading into the 4th quarter. What would they do? Dallas opened up the drive with another slant to Des Bryant, much like the one to open up the game in the 1st quarter. 4th quarter, Kyle Orton opens up the final quarter of the regular season by giving guys some Miles Austin. He followed that up with a horrible pass when he overthrew his wide receiver. 4th and 1, Jason Garrett waves like a falcon in a feeble attempt to save his job. Eagles tip a Kyle Orton pass, turnover on downs, Eagles ball. Nick Foles had to show us what he's got with some Jack Bauer time management. 11 plays, 60 yards, 539 ball control. What can Brown do for you? Bryce Brown sends Jerry Jones some UPS in the end zone. Eagles lead 24-16 after scoring their 3rd touchdown on the day with a hell of a good drive. That clockwork should work in their favor. What will Kyle Orton do in the clutch? Where's Witten? The game where Jason Witten replaces Waldo. Witten ran a vertical route for a 1st down, but a penalty on Dallas negated the play. So now Waldo will get his cameo back. Sorry, Jason Witten, you can't play Where's Waldo in Week 17 games against NFC East opponents. 4th and 9, Des Bryant flies like an eagle into the future. I don't know who's more offended, Lenny Kravitz or Vince Papale, the former Eagles wide receiver. Cowboys go for 2, hoping to tie it. Orton goes back to Des Bryant. The conversion is no good because Dallas failed to use variety on 2-point conversions. This is one of those plays where you bring 2 tight ends, you throw to Jason Witten or Gavin Escobar. Maybe you use the running game to set up a play-action pass. You bring some creativity, some boldness, some audacity to the table. I just see Kyle Orton playing chug-a-lug with Des Bryant like a monkey in a barrel. That's what spent condoms do, Kyle Orton. This is why you lost your job to Tim Tebow and any other quarterbacks you competed with when you had a job opportunity as a starting quarterback in the National Football League. Did we mention that Orton was like 1-2 or 1-3 in Week 17 contests prior to today's contest against the Philadelphia Eagles? Dallas folded Nick Foles up with excellent zone coverage on a play following the conversion on 3rd down. Cowboys regained possession of the ball at the 2-minute warning. Kyle Orton with the ball. What will he do? Can the Cowboys get a field goal to win the game? Can the Cowboys get to the playoffs without Tony Romo? Can Kyle Orton call Tony Romo a Nancy boy following a performance against the Philadelphia Eagles? No! Interception, Eagles ball, Eagles win. Randall Cunningham does not have to worry about Jerry Jones spamming his inbox. The Philadelphia Eagles are going to the NFL playoffs, ladies and gentlemen. And the Eagles will host the New Orleans Saints at Lincoln Financial Field, which will be fun because Saints are 3-5 on the road, and the Eagles have been the most exciting team in the second half of the season ever since Nick Foles put the convicted felon out of commission by taking his starting job. Now it's time to get Jimmy Fallon's thoughts on the NFC East Championship game. Thank you, NFC East, for making the Dallas Cowboys miss the playoffs for a third year in a row. Thank you to everybody that has watched Draft Utopia this year. We're at our site. Support us for updating our sites. Helped us get more Facebook likes. Inspired me to focus on my grades instead of other blah, blah, blah. This has been a really big year for us. Our Alexa traffic skyrocketed at the right time during the holiday season, and we can't wait to do more in 2014. Maybe we'll do some Madden NFL owner modes, starring Tyrone Shoelaces as the general manager for the Cleveland Browns, or Bill Lumberg as the general manager for the Dallas Cowboys. We'll do some gags, some goofs. Maybe we'll have the NSA / government people run the New England Patriots, and we'll just have some fun with it. We'll make a black and yellow labs be the GMs for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and we'll just goof around with a few teams, and we'll have fun with it and show you how the owner mode in Madden 25 works, because I didn't get Madden this year because I had grades in school to keep up with. But if I get Madden, it's only going to be until school resumes. And it's like, once we go back to Slippery Rock, grades. And I don't know if I'm going to have time to do that. I think it'd be cool to do. Maybe we'll do it this summer, assuming I don't get an internship with NFL.com, because my brother lives right by Los Angeles, and my goal is to get an internship with NFL.com. I'll do no highlights, but I want to focus on getting an opportunity to have an internship at NFL.com this summer, because if it's right by my older brother's home in LA, I think it'd be an excellent internship opportunity to help the Draft Utopia brand grow and to help me grow as a person. Help me give value to NFL.com personalities and keeping my mouth shut for a change. But that's 60 minutes of Draft Utopia minus the 2-minute drill or 3-minute drill or 2.5 men drill starring Chris Berman and the rest of the crew from Sunday NFL Countdown. For myself at Draft Utopia and everybody that's contributed in the past, we'd like to wish our audience a Happy New Year. Good night.